Raised in a trailer, viciously beaten by his stepfather, sexually abused by his mother, overcoming dyslexia, fighting in the streets, meeting his father for the first time at the age of 12, petty crime to military school to court-martial, and finally taking the baby steps towards working in his father's wrestling promotion, Vince McMahon's early life is definitely worthy of the film that TriStar are making about him. The man has been a driving force for the WWE for years, both on screen and off. He's come up with some of the best stories and matches in decades, and he's also madder than a box of frogs who you've just told Rick and Morty isn't as deep as you think it is, aka pretty fucking foamy. So let's take a look at the man who puts the I'm goddamn mental in Vince I'm goddamn mental McMahon in a little more detail. With this in mind, I'm Jules, WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 amazing backstage Vince McMahon stories. Number 10. Vince demands nakedness. So remember when Edge cashed in and beat Cena for the WWE Championship and declared he and Lita would perform a live sex show as a celebration? Well, that was all Vince. Clearly not understanding the concept of consent, he got his two performers to strip off for his pleasure and the cringe of the rest of us. It's not his only dalliance with dongs though, as he also made Christian and Jericho march to the rings in towels after their bags had been stolen, only to have their bits exposed for the bants. The pair convinced him to allow them to wear flesh-colored underwear to avoid, showing man penis to children, but his reasoning behind the event never faltered. I want you to be naked. That's what I want. Weird. Number 9. Vince doesn't know what a burrito is. Writing for The Big Show was a pretty tough job back in the day. He's large and should therefore in theory rarely lose, but could never decide on which side he was on, so therefore had to look weak sometimes. Plus, his KO punch is awful, and I hate it. It's just a fucking punch. They just punch each other all the time. Why is his any different? Back in the day, they were toying with a storyline to weaken the show by poisoning his burrito, which Vince resoundingly rejected. Not because of a food item being poisoned, but because he didn't think people would know what a burrito was. After moments of what must have been awkward silence, the creative team identified that everyone knew what one of Mexico's famous exports and America's best bastardizations was. Vince responded with, "Well, where the hell have I been?" What makes this worse is that he'd often have burritos delivered to him during the pitch meetings, leading many to think that he was joking, but he was not. Number 8. Vince demands that no one sleeps on his private jet. McMahon always travels from show to show on his private jet, drinking wine and playing the likes of AC/DC and Kid Rock very loudly. Sounds like a wild ride, right? Well, it better, because he fucking hates people falling asleep on his private jet and considers it to be the height of rudeness. Vince is famous for getting by on about 3 hours sleep a night for decades, so if he's up, you're up. It's standard etiquette to stay awake on long drives with other wrestlers, but this is a private jet, man. Fucking chill out. You've already made it. Number 7. Vince hates sneezing, but he loves farts. There's something about sneezing that really irks Vince. Maybe it's the fact that he can't control it and he hates not being able to be in control. He's cut monstrous rants on the subject and how it's a sign of weakness. However, one thing that he absolutely loves is people passing wind. CM Punk once told a tale of being on tour with the big lads and sharing a room with the boss as well as other legends. Unable to sleep, Punk was wide awake when he heard Vince's muscle-ridden cheeks part and release a loud toxic cloud. Then all alone, the boss chuckled to himself. What a moment that must have been. He absolutely loves farting though, and it's why Natalya had that gassy gimmick for a while, and it's also why he decided to with Gerald Briscoe time and time again by popping a pop in the gorilla position to mess with his delicate stomach. It even went so far that he accidentally followed through once, but still walked down to the ring in front of thousands of fans. That is clearly the origins of his famous power walk. Number 6. Vince insists on a 36-inch python. So remember before when I said that Vince loves a bit of nudity? Well, it turns out that his passion for flashing extends to even the WWE studio movies. When See No Evil was in production starring the Big Red Machine Kane, Vince was very insistent on a particular scene being included. He wanted Kane's serial killer Jacob Goodnight to whip out his dong, and for that dong to be 3 feet long. Just why? What is the point of this scene? Why does it need to be so fucking long? Apparently, nobody disputed this scene being included, but luckily it never made it to the final version. Vince, mate, you need therapy. Number 5. Vince thinks that he can take down the world. Vince clearly has a chip on his shoulder when it comes to his own wrestling career, mainly to the fact that his dad denied him permission to train in the ring and has made every effort to prove that he's the biggest dog in the yard of dogs in the dog yard factory, as well as appointing himself fucking champion of both both WWE and ECW at times, he also liked to try and tackle Kurt Angle backstage. Once he actually got the better of the Olympian wrestler and wouldn't shut up about it for months. This naturally irked Angle, and he decided that a flight back from the UK tour in 2000 was the best time to air this grievance. And by that I mean he leapt out and pinned him in front of everyone. However, things did not go to plan, as The Undertaker was asleep at the time and awoke to the brawl. Not knowing it was Angle, he legit choked the life out of him. Angle came to a few moments later with Vince staring down and laughing, having learned precisely nothing from the encounter. Number 4. Vince drunkenly takes tag team finishers. Back in December 1991, Vince was out on a mission, and that mission was to get fucking steaming at a San Antonio strip club. The boys with him on his self-appointed path of destruction included Mr. Perfect, Hulk Hogan, the Hart Foundation, and the Legion of Doom. And they decided that Vince, being a man sculpted purely from Anadrol, should take a doomsday device right then and there. Well, a lighter version of it anyway, with Hogan and Perfect catching the boss and laying him down on the floor like a drunken billionaire baby. After this little bump and a few laughs from the boss, all was gravy. That was until Bret and Neidhart decided that this type of corporate ass-kicking would not stand and delivered a heart attack with more blow than Scarface. This resulted in less laughing and more "oh my fucking chesting" from Vince. But don't worry, the night ended with them breaking into Ric Flair's room and pissing on his bed while Vince paraded around in his underpants, because of course he did. Number 3. Vince tries to run one of his writers off the road. When you bump into your bosses outside of work, it can sometimes be a bit awkward, especially when I'm naked and skinning a deer with my hands, but meeting Vince off the clock sounds even more surreal. Ex-writer Court Bauer met Vince in a parking lot where the boss then threw down a drag racing challenge. Accepting, thinking that it was all good sport, Bauer sped off alongside the boss. However, as the speeds increased, so did Vince's aggression, and he began to shunt into Bauer's car again and again. Shaken by this, he slowed down and let Vince pass. Later on, he would ask colleagues about whether Vince had legitimately tried to kill him, and the response was, well, Vince likes to win. Jesus. Number 2. Vince has coach arrested for illegal gambling. Now, as we all know, ribbing in the wrestling business is not just for her pleasure, and is in fact pranking on excessive levels between the talent and the staff. In Vince's case, he likes to go the fucking distance, pushing his workers to the limit with his weird sense of humor. Jonathan Coachman took the brunt of his bants once back in 2001, where he was arrested by 2 policemen who informed him that the little American football pool he ran had counted as a gambling racket and that he would be taken to jail. Alarmed at this, Coach was taken by the police to Vince's office, who told the flabbergasted employee that he wouldn't be bailed out and that he was on his own. Coach asked for something to cover his face because he was worried his parents would see, and Vince threw him a used pair of gym shorts. Chucked into the back of a police car, Coach thought it was all over for him until the car turned around and dropped him back at the event, where Vince was crying with laughter. And number 1, Vince talks to himself online like a crazy old man. This, my children, is what they call comedy gold. This is the 1998 AOL chat session. In August of that year, Vince took to the internet to chat to wrestling fans using the username WWF Live 2 and began to cause, let's just say, chaos. He ribbed a few people, took the piss out of Bob Backlund, and then things got even more mental. The site froze for all but Vince, and he was left alone for 10 minutes as he tried to fill the internet's version of dead air, or as it's known here, BuzzFeed. Slamming joke, that one. As time went on, he went from corny jokes to full-on breakdown, where he talked about Sable, the smell of Vader's mask, and eventually began to critique his own monologue. It is a perfect insight into the mind of McMahon, how he sees people, and how he sees himself. Like I said before, it is just bliss.
The killer in you is the power in me. Pleased to meet you, so good to see. The killer in you will keep me alive. Back to back, self-sacrifice.
Gosh, can you believe that person said that about that particular video on that entry? I sure can't. But you should like, share and subscribe below anyway. And also, the people who made this video, they're right here. Go follow them and give them some love. Also, there's more content, probably above my head. Check it out. Or don't. 50-50.